Hey everybody, welcome to today's Feather webinar. Thanks for joining. I'm going to give everyone just another minute or two to trickle in. So in the meantime, go ahead and drop where you're joining from in the chat or your organization name if you'd like to share that. Just to get a sense of who's in the room today. Nice, I'm in Florida as well. I'm in Gainesville. Okay, got some Florida people in the house today. Go Gators. Chamber orchestra, cool. Got some examples of symphony orchestra campaigns that I'm going to share today. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Yeah, and we invited kind of a combination of organization types today. So Feather offers digital marketing tools and services to a variety of organizations, including member-based organizations like associations, as well as arts and culture organizations. We also help out nonprofits. So if any of you ended up in the room today, welcome. We also have a lot of great tools for helping you get in front of donors, potential attendees. But today, we've talked a lot about how to get in front of the next generation of donors. So I wanted to talk today about how to get in front of the next generation of members and attendees and subscribers. So I know that can be a really big challenge for a lot of organizations. And so I just want to kind of talk through what the challenge looks like, look at some of the trends, validate some of the barriers you're facing with some data, and then talk about some ways that you can tackle those challenges. So, alrighty. Looks like we've got a good number of people. Wayne, I see you raised your hand. Was that intentional? I know some people sometimes do that accidentally, so drop in the chat if you want me to. I think I can unmute you if you need me to, but just checking if that was intentional. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the content. So again, thank you to everyone who has joined and who's just trickled in the last minute or so. Welcome. We're going to be talking today about reaching the next generation of potential attendees, members, whatever you're trying to do, whoever you're trying to get in front of. You obviously want to promote that to younger people as well, and that can be challenging. And so, especially in a world full of free content, free resources, that's kind of the big competitor now. So let's get into it. Let me just adjust a couple of things here on my screen. So I'm Isa Hasty, Senior Manager of Content and Marketing Communications here at Feather. And then, yeah, another quick question for the chat, just to kind of kick things off in terms of the actual substance of what we're talking about today. So go ahead and drop in the chat what you're currently doing to reach younger audiences. Just kind of curious what the range of yeah, efforts and campaigns looks like in the group that we have here today. That's cool, Erin. I think influencer campaigns feel kind of difficult sometimes for organizations, especially smaller ones. So would love to hear more if you're willing to drop in the chat a little bit about how you get access to influencers and what those people look like, if they're, community members, if they're people that you like micro influencers that you found on TikTok that you were able to connect with. Any quick tidbits you want to share on that, I think would be appreciated by the group. Diversifying social media. Yep. Struggling to reach them. Crystal, you are in the right room. Okay, and then special activities at events. That's interesting too, Janet, if you want to expand a little on that. I'd just be curious to hear what that looks like. Because, yeah, I think there's definitely different demands coming from younger attendees and younger members in terms of what events actually look like and sort of content formats and the themes that you're sort of covering in your events. Okay, Young CPA Committee, and we do college and university outreach to students and their accounting professors, very popular. Our Top Golf networking events and free scholarships. Okay, very cool. Uh, and yeah, lower prices for students. I'm not sure if you are, Colleen. I didn't see. Let's see if you for your org name. Yeah, I think that works for arts and culture organizations if you're selling tickets, as well as membership-based organizations if you're actually selling memberships or selling tickets to an event. Lower prices for people with less money is always the way to go there. So, alrighty. Thanks for chiming in there. So before I get in, I'm just going to launch a quick poll to see if anyone would like to be subscribed to Feather's weekly newsletter. It's called our Good Marketing Brief, and we have a version for associations as well as a version for arts and culture organizations. So you will get resources that are catered to your use cases and the things that you are doing every day, industry trends, um, yeah, resources, things like that. So lots of tips and tricks. I know there's usually a lot of people that are already subscribed in these groups, so that's awesome to see. But yeah, go ahead and drop a yes. I'll sign you up. You'll start seeing those next Wednesday in your inbox. So you don't have to click anything to subscribe, and hopefully you'll find that helpful. I will be sending out the recording and the deck after the webinar, so you can expect those in your inbox tomorrow morning at the latest. And yeah, if you have any questions as we go along, drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to kind of stop and answer questions while I'm in the section that you're asking about. And then I will get to anything that I missed at the end. So, quick agenda. Today, we're going to be talking about why younger audiences are so hard to reach. So, kind of what the challenges look like, what is actually causing, sort of mechanically and structurally, what's causing this challenge for both member-based organizations and arts and culture organizations, right? What that looks like for each of your verticals. And then how you can reframe your approach. So just some easy ways to think about how to reach people, reach younger people. And then I'll go into sort of three main buckets of things that you can do. So giving more away, right? And this is something that you can think about regardless of whatever advertising budget or marketing budget you have. You can think about ways to reframe your offer, reframe your ask, right, for your audience, mix up your messaging, things like that. Reaching people where they are. So we're going to get a little bit into the digital advertising and digital marketing side of things and the tools and campaigns that you can actually use to get in front of younger people. And then blending your channels. So never relying just on one thing, mixing it up, making sure that each channel supports the other, and then you have a multi-channel marketing system in place so that you're reaching people where they are whenever it's right for them. All right, so let's kind of name the problem, right? So for most of you in the room here, getting younger people in the door is probably one of the hardest things that your organization is dealing with right now. And this is not about younger people not caring, right? And it's not just a gap in how you're communicating your value. So for associations, you're dealing with more and more what we want to call unbundled competition. So this is, you used to be the go-to for people in your space or in your field to network, to move up in their careers, to get credentialed, to find conference tickets, right? And to be able to sort of access the resources in their field that they needed and often were obligated to access, right? And so a lot of the time, a lot of your older members might kind of come from a time where it was required by their employers to actually be a member of a specific organization, a professional organization, whatever that looks like. And that's just not as common anymore. A lot of people are finding free resources and what they need online. And so they're kind of doing a lot of that on their own terms using resources that are free or cheap. LinkedIn, Slack, YouTube, a lot of platforms have free information and networking opportunities. There's lots of free webinars. I think the pandemic kind of impacted this, right? So even if I think we've seen a lot of trends about people are really eager to get back to in-person things, but the fact is the pandemic made it so that there's a virtual version of almost everything now. And so even if people are eager to be in person and to network in real life, they still have access to virtual options, free virtual options, and that's simply easier in a lot of cases and more convenient. And so they might opt for that instead of an in-person situation or a paid membership, right, to get exclusive access. And then there's a discoverability problem. And so this applies to associations as well, but especially arts and culture organizations. So a lot of young people are interested in doing new things, right? Attending events, performances, But the question is, are you actually showing up on their feeds in ways that are compelling and consistent and are going to make them actually know that you exist and want to attend an exhibit or a show that you're hosting, right? And so this is kind of a discoverability problem, and this is solvable, right? So you need to find the right messaging, but it's really about being on the right platforms with the right messaging at the right time. And so I think naming all of this and sort of what it is and what it isn't helps to understand what you're actually up against. And rather than kind of thinking like, okay, younger generations are just impossible to reach, or things are changing in an irreversible way, and we're a dying industry, I think kind of breaking it down and actually looking at what you're up against and realizing that you offer those things as well, but they are all just coming in a different format. There's institutional changes, right? And so people just kind of deal with that buying process in a different way. And so younger people are going to be, yeah, looking for the easier, convenient, free thing. But that doesn't mean that what you offer doesn't still have a ton of value that you can differentiate. And so, yeah, just looking at some trends and stats in the association world to kind of validate some of the challenges that you're facing, right? And so a decade ago, about half of associations reported that their membership was growing. Compared with today, around 21% of associations are saying that they're seeing growth. So that's obviously, the majority are not seeing growth, which is not great. Growth has been flattening over the last few years. And one of the big red flags here is that 11% of associations describe their own value prop as not very compelling. Or sorry, 11% describe it as very compelling, right? So most organizations, 89% roughly, are saying, we don't really feel like we stack up against all of the options that are out there, all of the free options. How do we actually differentiate ourselves and make people willing to pull out their wallet and pay a little bit, right? When there's really just so many options out there. And so ASAE put it well, the old model of belonging and renewal by habit no longer works the way it once did. And so this is just not built in anymore. And so there is a demand problem, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat that and say that there isn't, but there is also a communication problem. And I think because, it just feels like this insurmountable problem or reaching a whole generation of people kind of feels a little bit impossible. Often organizations don't try to break down the problem and see where they can start to show up, right? And so if you can sell your value to young people, that's, it's just about showing up in the right places, and this can be worked on. All right. And again, it's not apathy, it's unbundling. So the job that you used to do exclusively is now being done for free by a combination of companies, websites. And yeah, this is the part that we actually skip a lot of the time is kind of naming what the things are that you're up against, right? So it's not that young people don't want community or continuing education or to feel like they're part of their profession. It's just that, there's so many options for accessing these things. So just a few different buckets of what this looks like. So for professional development, you might be up against these other platforms, right? So offering free or, affordable, reduced cost, continuing education, Slack, Discord, Reddit, LinkedIn, obviously are peer communities for networking. And then this sense of credibility and belonging can also happen in a lot of these peer communities. And so that can be the challenge, right? And then for arts and culture organizations, it's a different kind of no. So it's less of a sort of career ROI calculation, more of a spontaneous, in the moment identity question. Like, is this for me tonight, this weekend, right? Do I have a friend who's available to go with me? Is it worth the money? Do I actually want to do this? I can maybe go next time, things like that. So it's a similar problem to what's happening in the association space in terms of just people having so many options to choose from. They don't just default to you, right? They ask a number of questions, even if it's kind of subconscious and quick. They're asking questions before committing. And so they're not playing hard to get. They're just not defaulting to attending shows and exhibits and performances every weekend or several times a month in the way that people used to 30 years ago. And then, according to the National Endowment for the Arts, some data here shows that the public participation in the arts has been declining since 1982, and it is steepest among people under 45. So we're looking at Gen Z and millennials. And then adult participation is heavily predicted by childhood exposure. And because over the last 15 to 20 years, there have been so many cuts in the arts education world, fewer kids had access to that, right? And so there's less of a proclivity to kind of seek that out in adulthood, but it does not mean that young people look down on the arts or that they're not interested. So, on the contrary, there's plenty of data to back up that discoverability is actually the barrier here and not desire. So, 70% of young people are curious about Broadway, but 40% report never really seeing anything about that in their feeds, right, on social media and online. 88% of adults under 45 attended a classical concert this year. I know I myself did, so I saw that stat and I was like, okay, cool. I've attended at least two classical concerts actually. So one in the spring and then one last Christmas. And so Gen Z and millennials actually now lead in attending these concerts. And this is kind of cool too. We'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about ways that you can turn classical art into sort of a fusion or incorporate other elements that will actually attract younger people because I think young people love, when movies are turned into concerts and when you bring other elements and technology into exhibits and things like that. So fusion is a really cool way to see success with pulling in younger audiences. And then 79% of people between 18 and 35 plan to attend more live events in 2026. And I saw this and also felt that it applied to me. So that's cool. And yeah, the one thing is that they want less curated formats. And so I think that's kind of like an interesting tidbit. Curious to hear anyone in the chat if you feel like this is feedback that you've gotten or if you've kind of found a way to adapt the format of your performances or your exhibits or your shows or your events or conferences to feel more appealing to younger people, less curated and sort of more fluid. Um, Thought that was just kind of an interesting insight. So plainly put, everything that we've talked about probably isn't reversing to how it used to work. That's just not really how things go. But there is interest and desire from younger people to engage with the things that you offer, right? That hasn't changed. The underlying needs haven't changed. The institutional forms and the way that these things are delivered has changed, right? The decision-making processes have changed. And so that should make you feel like the work that you do does have value for younger people, and you just have to package it and promote it in new ways. And so basically, what's changing? The specific format of dues for a badge or subscribing for the same seats all the time, that's kind of losing its value. And we know that affordable or free on-demand alternatives aren't temporary. The feeling of FOMO, knowing all of the things that are going on and having doubts about committing to one thing because there might be something better, that's also here to stay. This is all kind of the new baseline. But what isn't changing is people wanting to have a professional identity, wanting recognition for their achievements in their field, wanting to connect to something bigger than a job, the other human beings in their profession, in their space, right? When it comes to arts and culture, people have that desire for community, for live performances, for entertainment, for learning. All of those things are very human, and all of these things aren't going away, right? And so you just don't get default access to it anymore. You have to compete for it. And so, what does this actually look like? So, we're going to talk about these three buckets, giving away something in order to actually build a funnel, right? And so, this might be something a lot of you are already doing, but I want to kind of just talk about some different ways this can look. So, giving away free content, guest access, sort of more flexible entry points for people to kind of opt in the first time, pulling them in, warming them up, and then getting them to make a bigger commitment. Then we'll talk a little bit about how you can show up in the right place at the right time with all of the digital marketing channels, social media channels, right, that you want to be showing up on. And then how to make sure that you're not relying solely on one channel, blending all of these efforts so that you have a cohesive multi-channel marketing program in place that's going to actually get you in front of the right people. So let's talk about what it looks like to give something away in order to build that funnel out. And these are things that you can try kind of regardless of ad budget. So I wanted to start here. All right. So free content isn't your competitor, right? It's not necessarily just a giveaway. It's kind of like a demo. It's creating a funnel for people to come into the door. So a giveaway, a free or cheap giveaway, right? This could be a useful article, a free webinar. A lot of webinars are free. I feel like paid webinars are more and more rare. So I know that a lot of associations offer paid webinars, but consider offering, a webinar series where the first one is free. You show your value there, kind of get people in the door, and then they can pay for the next one. A discounted preview night if you are hosting shows. And then make the paid version obviously better, right? And so this could look like, all right, you can get access to a free webinar series, but in order to get certified with us, you do have to pay. And that's pretty normal. I think people expect that, but they might not necessarily go to your organization for that certification if they can find it elsewhere. But if you pull them in, show them value, show them that you have a lot of knowledge, then they might stay with you for these other parts, right? Cohort learning, right? The kind of like peer-to-peer networking access. If you're arts and culture, right? Best seats in the house, backstage access, things like that. And then also just saving money over time with a subscription. So I know that that appeals to a lot of younger people just because we're kind of used to subscription models, paying more upfront, right? In order to save over time. And so, yeah, that it differs, right? I mean, some people aren't going to have the means to pay upfront for a subscription, but some will. And so you might find more millennials are able to do that than Gen Z just in terms of disposable income, but definitely test out different models of subscriptions just to see how you can get more people in the door and get that recurring revenue for your organization. And then bridging these two things, right? So you want to make sure that everyone who falls into this bucket, so they engaged with some kind of free thing that you offer, you want to stay in front of them with the next step to get into this bucket. So this can look like emailing them, right? If they opted in, gave you their email, if they signed up for something, but also advertising, right? Showing up with display ads, showing up with ads on Meta, on LinkedIn, if that makes sense for you. A lot of you are doing TikTok, it looks like. So staying in front of people who did engage with you already, this is key. Those are your warmest leads. We'll get into that a lot more in a few minutes, but you want to make sure that you're putting a ton of effort into staying in front of people who have already shown interest. Those are the people who are most likely to continue to convert and pay the most over time, right? And so, yeah, you don't want to be showing up for people who, engage with one of these things with just generic kind of learn about us content, right? That's for people who've never heard about you before. If you're doing an awareness campaign or a lookalike audience campaign on Facebook or something like that, you start with that more generic messaging, just getting them to your website. But if they've already done something, filled out a form, signed up for something, consumed some content or some educational resources, then you know more about them and you want to incorporate that into your messaging and get them to take the next step by actually appealing to who they are, what they've done, what you know about them. And this is all stuff that you can automate when you are using the right platform, right? So Feather offers this, but this is just generally best practice to make sure that you have the right retargeting campaigns set up and that people, depending on what pages they visit or what actions they take, they'll get filtered into the campaign that's most appropriate for them and they'll see the messaging that applies to whatever they're doing on your website and online. And just a quick example of what this could look like. So think about, a 30-year-old physician needs continuing education credits in order to stay licensed, right, in her field. But maybe she doesn't want to commit to a full membership or want to commit to joining your organization in order to do that. So if join is the only path, right, in order to get access, you must join first in order to access anything. She might turn away entirely and never come back. And she'll go to a competitor, get something for free, get something for a reduced cost, or get something for the same cost, but she doesn't have to commit to a year of something else, right? So if you kind of let her pay for what she needs or offer her a reduced rate for what she needs at first, then she's likely to join later once she's kind of in the mix, receiving, communications from you, more educational resources from you. As long as you build that relationship and kind of open that door, the world is your oyster in terms of being able to continue to build on that, prove value. And that person is going to be a lot more likely to join your organization than someone you're reaching cold, right? So you want to kind of open the door, tag who's walking through the door, and then retarget them with specific next steps based on who they are and what they're doing. And those people are always more likely to actually convert. And then for arts and culture, some examples here, right? Make the second visit the offer instead of the first. So you could say, okay, buy your first ticket to a show, and then for a limited time, you can have free access to the next show, right? So this drives a little bit of urgency rather than kind of having an ongoing discount or something like that, that kind of trains people to wait and see, when it works for them or when the next discount applies. Try to drive people to actually purchase their second ticket within a certain window and kind of create that routine of, okay, I go to this place now, right? So I think a lot of the time we think about the first entry point being the one that's reduced cost or free or whatever, but sometimes people are willing to pay because they're kind of, they're looking at your website, they're browsing your pages, they clearly are interested. They might be willing to pay, especially if they know that they can get kind of a twofer, right? But making the second thing free instead of the first ensures that they will actually come again. Um, and then building relationships between visits. So this could look like a series of emails on artists that you're featuring, a season theme, imagery, photos from shows. So just kind of keeping up with people and updating them on what you have to offer, staying present, not just kind of falling off the radar once they attend a show. You don't want to let them just go, right? Those are, again, really warm leads. You could potentially turn them into season subscribers, people who come monthly to your organization, to your shows. So you want to make sure that you stay present between their visits. And then making renewal feel like a status, not a bill. So, offering some kind of status or early seat access, things like this, right? Reframing the subscription as belonging to something rather than prepaying. And I will say, I think status matters less and less to younger organizations than it did before, but convenience matters, cost matters, access, comfort, priority matters. And so if you can sort of center those things and make them feel like they're part of something and make them feel like they're getting easier access to something that they want to participate in, that is key. Um, all right, okay. Cool. I think we're good on time. Alrighty. And then just a few more ideas. So, I think another thing that's actually not on here that I kind of mentioned briefly before is that a lot of younger organizations love fusing or blending themes or formats. And so I know a lot of theaters and orchestras have success with kind of blending classical music with contemporary music, doing, a version of a movie in concert, things like that. One of Feather's customers is Quad City Symphony Orchestra, and they're amazing. They have really great success with selling tickets to their shows. And they host things like Nightmare Before Christmas in concert, Lion King, Harry Potter in concert, things like that. And they always are careful to include attendees to past shows that might be relevant to the one that they're promoting now, right? So if someone attends Nightmare Before Christmas in concert and they're millennial, you know that it was probably sort of a nostalgia component for them. And so you want to make sure that you're promoting any other similar shows to those same people. They're way more likely to sign up for that than, again, somebody who's not in that age group or who has never attended a show before. And so just thinking about your audience and the buckets of people, who they are, what they've done with you, what is upcoming that they can engage with, right? And really serving people the messaging and the offers that are going to make most sense for them and for who they are. Offering a flexible entry tier. So this could be, a choose your own 4 shows, flex pass, something like that. For camps and family programs, you might give past attendees an early registration window or a discount. You might offer like sibling or returning camper perks, things like that. Bring a friend. And then bundling extras, so making sure that you're including extra perks, right, in the value of a subscription. So whatever that looks like for you, I'm sure a lot of you are doing things like this already, but always testing what works and leaning into what's actually working for those younger people, right? What's driving registrations and signups. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about the digital side of this. So showing up in the right place at the right time, right? Showing up on the right channels. What does this look like? So it's really important to be showing up while people are looking for something like what you do and after. So I think a lot of the time we think about, okay, I want to show up on the Google search page when they're searching for things like my organization, right? I want to make sure that I'm showing up in AI search results. It's becoming increasingly important. It is important. LinkedIn, TikTok ads, right? Building awareness. These are all really important things for getting in front of people while they're actively looking for shows in their area, for events that they could attend in the next week. If they're looking to sign up for a membership to an organization, right? They're looking for resources, ongoing education, things like that. when they're looking for those things, you want to be showing up, and there's plenty of ways you can do that. But then after they've looked, most people do not convert on the first visit to the website. The first time they see an ad, they might not even click to your website, right? And so you want to be continuing to show up after someone has shown interest. And this is actually the part where I think a lot of organizations don't kind of keep things going. And it feels obvious when you kind of see it laid out. It's like, okay, of course, a lot of people aren't converting when they first hit my website. I know that people leave, but what am I actually doing to actively stay in front of those people and bring them back? So just like when you are looking at a pair of shoes online, you get distracted, you have, second thoughts, you leave the page, you close the browser, and then you start to see ads for those shoes, and you might actually buy them because you're reminded of it and you did want them, right? You're a lot more likely to buy those shoes than a random piece of clothing that's advertised to you that you never looked at. So, this is a really important component for organizations to be thinking about when it comes to their marketing, when it comes to their ad budget. And so, I actually want to, let me see, I think I might have a poll for this. And if not, I'll just ask people to drop in the chat. Let me just check. Um, One second. Okay. I will drop this just because we're going to talk about geofencing as well. Go ahead and answer this poll for me. I'm just curious who's running these types of campaigns. Because I think retargeting is really low-hanging fruit, but often underutilized by um, associations and nonprofits. So I'm seeing a lot are doing both, which is great. Some are doing retargeting ads and not geofencing, and some are doing neither. Okay, so really excited to see that the majority are actually doing. Let me share the results here. Um, a good number of people are doing both. Not everyone answered this, but this is good stuff. So yeah, helpful to kind of know that a lot of people in the room are running retargeting and geofencing, kind of know what those are. A lot of the time, organizations don't really know what to do with the web traffic that they're getting or aren't necessarily tracking that. So this is a great starting point. So let's talk a little bit about what these channels can look like. So CRM retargeting, you're reaching people that are already in your database. Site retargeting, so these are people who came to your website, explored something, visited your event page, your membership page, your exhibit page, and didn't sign up. You want to stay in front of them with ads and get them to come back. Social retargeting, right? You can find those same people on Meta. So actually using your first party audience data, people who are visiting your website, your warmest leads, going directly to them on Meta and advertising to them rather than using Meta's tools to get in front of whatever generic audiences or whatever they consider to be lookalike audiences. You can actually get directly in front of your people who are visiting your website on Meta. It's another thing that Feather offers with our Meta integration, kind of makes it easy to get in front of all of the people in all of the places that they're browsing using that first party website data. And then email marketing, obviously, if you have their information, this is a great way to keep up with people and make sure you're not falling off of their radar. All right, so I've said this already multiple times, but your warmest leads are already in the mix with you, right? They've already been to your website, they might be in your database. And so before you spend another dollar on cold outreach, you want to make sure that you're thinking about how you're showing up for these people who are already aware of you, already visiting your website. So 97% of website visitors leave without converting on their first visit. We see a lot of different stats for this. Sometimes we see 81% of website visitors don't convert. I do feel like it's closer to this. Just if you think about, when you visited a website for the first time, how likely are you to pay for something versus maybe waiting and seeing and then deciding later, right? And you get an email from them or a reminder, and that's when you convert. So this is pretty high, and you want to make sure that you are not letting those people fall off. 70% of people are more likely to convert with retargeting ads than someone seeing you cold, right? And then the click-through rate for retargeting versus cold display ads is you're going to see a 10x increase in the CTR rate compared to just cold outreach. And so, again, a lot of the people in the room are probably already thinking about these priorities in this way, but the highest priority in terms of who you're getting in front of with retargeting ads, people who started a registration or a checkout process on your website, visited a high intent page like a membership page or an event registration page. And then sort of medium priority is going to be maybe expired or lapsed members, attendees, or subscribers. So people that you have in your database, people who have engaged or paid before, but maybe haven't visited your website in a while. And then lower priority, but still absolutely important. And again, easy, low-hanging fruit is to retarget general website visitors, blog or resource readers, people who, are just exploring your website, reading your About Us page, kind of learning more. This is going to be more of a nurturing campaign. So you don't want to, be too in your face with explicit like salesy pitches, but you want to kind of keep them coming back, and get them to engage with you over time and eventually convert. So these are all groups that you need to be thinking about, but bucketing them out and making sure that you're showing the right messaging to the right person at the right time is key. And then thinking about retargeting. So hopefully, again, a lot of you are doing this effectively already, but tagging the pages that matter. So thinking about your website, thinking about all of the things that a potential young person visiting your website could be doing, right? And then figuring out, okay, I want my membership page to track visitors and then retarget them with ads, about membership perks, right? About membership benefits. And then again, this is all segmented based on who they are. So if this is an existing member looking to renew, they should see different messaging than a non-member who's new, who's looking to become a member for the first time. Pricing pages, event pages, all of these need their own audience. They need their own tracking pixels. And then matching the audience, or sorry, matching the message to the page. So making sure, again, that the messaging is consistent based on what someone's doing on your website, giving it runway. So these windows can really vary depending on what you're doing and what you're selling. Something like a ticket to a show that's coming up in a week, there's going to be a tighter window for retargeting people and driving urgency versus a longer tail buying decision like becoming a member, right? So this might not be long enough for that. You might be retargeting people for weeks or months based on them having visited a membership page, trying to get them to come back. You want to make sure you're switching out your content and your messaging and your creatives regularly so that you're not, getting any of that banner blindness because it's a very real thing. People scroll past things that they've seen before and it kind of blends into the background. But yeah, if someone visits your membership page, you want to stay in front of them with relevant membership benefits. If they visit your conference page, you want them to start seeing ads for that too. So and then layer channels, don't rely on one. So making sure that you're combining retargeting ads with also retargeting people in their email inbox and on social, right? And kind of having consistent messaging across those channels so that people are seeing the same thing from you and they are going to be more likely to convert if you are, yeah, showing up in consistent ways across channels. So just a couple of examples of how some organizations have done this using Feather retargeting. So this is Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. They retargeted people who visited specific event registration pages with ads about those specific events. And so if somebody visited the Broadway and Hollywood event page, started the registration page or started the checkout process and didn't finish, or maybe they didn't even start that, but they visited the page, they will start seeing ads with imagery and language directly related to what they were looking at. Don't miss out, drive some urgency as it gets closer to the event, things like that. And so this organization was able to sell 42 season subscriptions at $27,000 through retargeting ads like this, getting people to come not only to individual events, but also buy season subscriptions. And then National Trial Lawyers, this is another Feather customer. They reminded event page visitors to come back and finish registering for the conference, right? So they drove $247,000 in conference registration revenue from running retargeting campaigns, getting people to come back, finish their registration, complete that conversion that they started. And then Japan America Society of Washington, D.C. This is another organization that I love. Their creatives are just always really beautiful, and I feel like the events that they host are wonderful. They retarget page abandoners with ads reminding them to register as well. So this is specifically from their Cherry Blossom Festival that they host in the spring every year. And they retarget people who visit the page and don't register. And they drove $14,000 in ticket sales a couple of years ago through these retargeting campaigns. Um, and then reaching people where they are is key. So this is where geofiltering comes in, geofencing, right? So geofencing specifically allows you to draw a digital perimeter around a specific real area, on a map, right? And then serve ads to people who are or were in that space. And so this is a really great campaign type if you kind of understand who your audience is and where they're spending time, and you can serve them ads because they spend time in those areas. So for associations, you can think about competing industry events, workplaces, right? You can geofence those places so that people who are showing up in those specific areas, geographic areas, zip codes, buildings with their mobile devices will then start seeing ads from you to learn more about your organization, to learn more about your event, right? For arts and culture organizations, if you live in a tourist destination, you can geofence other touristy areas around town to say, hey, come check out our show, come check out our museum, buy a ticket for this Friday night, whatever that looks like. And you can also target higher income areas of town, right? If live, I've heard from some organizations that are, children's museums and things like that. If they have like retirement communities nearby where you might have people who want to take their grandkids to events during the week or things like that, just think about who am I trying to reach, and how can I get in front of them? And then specifically, when you're trying to reach younger people, you might geofence schools where the parents of young kids might be spending time, waiting at pickup, things like that. Parks, right? So if you are trying to reach parents, think about where parents are spending time. If you're trying to reach, young people to attend a fundraising event or something like that. Okay, if you're an example that comes to mind is Palmetto Community Care, that's another Feather user. They host a beer fest fundraiser every year, and they geofence breweries and bars in their town to kind of get in front of people who obviously are interested in craft beers, in social activities, and hanging out with their friends. They geofence similar areas to say, okay, hey, if you're interested in this, you might be interested in coming to this event. So lots of creative ways that you can use geofencing. And then geofencing campaigns do convert at higher rates. So the click-through rate for geofenced campaigns is between 4 and 7.5% versus 0.4% for standard display ads, right? And so this is going to vary by industry, it's going to vary by organization, but it goes without saying that showing up in front of people based on where they were and what they're doing with something relevant to where they were and what they were doing is going to convert at higher rates. So just kind of get creative with thinking about where your people are spending time and how you could get in front of them with mobile ads. And then a couple of examples of how some other organizations have done this. So this Association ABC Wisconsin chapter, they geofenced college campuses to get in front of younger people about apprenticeship opportunities, right? And so if you're trying to say, hey, maybe a 4-year college, education isn't for you, come join our apprenticeship program, start working, get in the real world, right? And so offering things like this to younger groups of people where they're going to be spending time. So college campuses, even high schools, right? People are kind of making, initial decisions about, do I apply to college? Do I, go into some other field, right? And so think about where those young people are in the world and geofence those areas and serve them ads about some other opportunities that they could think about for their future. Golisano Children's Museum of Naples, they geofence schools, parks, and family spots in the area to get in front of parents, right? So millennial parents who are on their phones at a park, or things like that. And basically, if they brought their mobile device into this fenced area, then once they leave, they will continue to see ads. And so it doesn't have to be that they're looking at their phone in that moment, but if their mobile phone entered the fenced area, then they will see ads ongoing about opportunities to enroll their kid in a summer camp or an after-school program, things like that. All right. And then social media. So you want to catch people while they are scrolling. This really, really applies to arts and culture organizations because people are more likely to make a spontaneous purchase, be in a more leisurely state, be looking for something fun to do when they're scrolling on social media. For associations, it might look a little bit more like LinkedIn, although LinkedIn is more expensive, right, to serve ads on. And so you definitely want to be showing up on Meta as well because the people that you are trying to reach for professional reasons also have social media. They also have mobile devices. They're also going to be scrolling, and you want to be showing up when they're also kind of in a relaxed state too, right? And maybe more interested in thinking about opportunities or, timelines, right? Am I available to attend this event? Do I want to do this? And so 81% of consumers say that social media compels them to make spontaneous purchases multiple times a year. I think we can all agree that's true. 25% of all traffic to event pages comes directly from social platforms. And so whether you're hosting a conference, an annual meeting, a concert, an exhibit, anything like that, a fundraiser, right? A lot of that traffic is going to be coming to you from social media platforms. So you want to make sure you're showing up there with paid ads. And then 50% of event planners are already running social media ads. So this shouldn't feel foreign. I'm sure a lot of you are doing this, but just kind of doubling down that paid ads in addition to organic social and boosted social posts is absolutely important. And then again, discoverability is more important than the persuasion piece, right? In the first place, you have to get in front of people and then you can persuade. And so just coming back to this stat, about 40% of Gen Z and millennials being curious about Broadway and shows and theater, but not seeing it in their feed. And then blending your channels, right? So you don't want to rely solely on one thing ever. You want all of these pieces to kind of reinforce each other and fit together nicely. So here are just some of the channels we've already talked about and some additional ones that I think are important to think about. So texting, SMS, right? Younger people are going to be more likely to convert and to be checking their phones. I know that I prefer SMS notifications when I've bought a ticket for something. It's just easier. I'm going to respond to a text more quickly and readily than maybe an email that pops up. Even if they both pop up on my phone, usually the notifications from my email, there's more of them. Texting, it's like, okay, one and done. So 90% open rate for texting. So you want to make sure that you're doing this, especially with timely things, right? So if you need them to confirm something or you want to send a reminder text, make sure that you are using SMS in addition to email. And then, yeah, you can run this via your AMS or CRM or whatever's working for you. Retargeting plus using the data that's in your CRM. So this is your highest priority channel. Like we talked about, these are your warmest people, people who are visiting your site, people who've already given you their email and they're in your database, people who've attended events in the past, past members, people who've purchased tickets, right? And so all of these people are warm and they are worth your time and your effort. So you want to make sure that you are showing up for them. And with the CRM retargeting, you can actually show up with display ads for people who are in your CRM, even if they haven't recently visited your website. So for anonymous visitors, obviously you're cooking them, you're trying to get in front of them within a window of time from when they visited. That's sort of standard display ad retargeting. And then with CRM retargeting, you can serve those same types of ads to people simply because you have their email address. So in Feather, if there's any Feather users here, we call that email mapping. It's often referred to as CRM retargeting. So kind of combining this, staying in front of people who are in your database and who aren't, but are visiting your website. This is key. Search and AI discoverability. So a lot of non-members are going to find you by searching in ChatGPT, other AI platforms, the AI overviews that Google provides, and other tools like that. And so this is sort of similar to the way you want to think about SEO, right? So if any of you are sort of putting effort into creating content, creating website content, writing blogs that sort of answer questions that people might be searching for, on Google or in AI engines, it's the same thing. So you want to just be making sure that your website and your content are answering the questions that people are going to be searching for. You should definitely test this, right? So go incognito, test out, ask some questions that you think a potential member, potential attendee might be typing into an AI platform or into Google and see if you show up and then see how you can incorporate more information that sort of addresses those queries on your website. That's the way to show up organically in both search engines on Google. So that's sort of SEO and AI discoverability in one bucket. You want to make sure that you are also prioritizing that in addition to paid efforts. And then social, organic and paid. So like I said before, creating short form video content. A lot of you said you were doing TikTok. That's amazing. So keep doing what's working for you and make sure that you're also engaging in investing in paid ads and not just organic. I think this might apply more to nonprofits or smaller organizations, but a lot of the time there's some organic presence and maybe a little bit of boosting, but not as much effort in the paid advertising. Um, Area. And so you want to make sure that you are paying to show up because Facebook and Instagram definitely prioritize personal connections, friends, and family. And so as a business, you need to be paying to play. And then community and peer referral. So this can go a long way as well. A lot of members might find you through a peer or an employer. So make sure that you're doing whatever you can to formalize referral asks and not just leave it to chance. Email still works. Don't stop using email. Obviously, test things, test subject lines, test email formats and designs, see what works, more content, less content. And this will have lower open rates for younger audiences than SMS, but it's still important to be showing up in the email inbox, and it's great for longer form content, right? So outcome stories, credential and education pathways. So if you want to say a lot, email is a great place to do that. Again, keep it, visually engaging and digestible, but email is not going anywhere anytime soon. Okay, so I just put together this list of 5 things that you can think about doing, tomorrow or next week or whatever. Obviously, you don't have to do all of them or any of them, but I definitely recommend thinking about one or two of these things and trying to, get started with like a new thing. So these are things you can do regardless of budgets, kind of like brainstorming exercises, but maybe, think about reframing a value prop and test that against your original value prop. An easy way to do this is running some ads, right? Ads are a great way to A/B test short content, CTAs, because they're small and concise. So that's a great way to sort of test out value props and language, taglines, and then audit whether a non-member would be able to find you through Google or AI search. So again, do this in incognito, ask a friend to do it, ask your coworkers, and yeah, and then adding a low friction entry point. So just thinking about, and I'm sure a lot of you are already doing some version of this, but think about maybe something else that you could offer. And then building a retargeting list from event attendees, site visitors, and/or expired members. So think about who you could be getting in front of, who's already in your warmest audience, and what that looks like. Again, even if you're already doing some version of this, think about, okay, am I actually getting in front of site visitors who came to my membership page in the last 30 days in a different way than I'm getting in front of expired members whose emails I have, who are in my database, but haven't engaged with me in a year, right? Those are different audiences that require different messaging. And then adding SMS for at least one time sensitive touch point. So I'm sure most of you are using SMS to some degree, but just think about other ways that you can incorporate it to really drive more conversions and make sure that people are seeing you and that you are continuing to, yeah, show up and stay on people's radar, stay top of mind. All right. So yeah, the thesis here is the need hasn't changed, it hasn't gone anywhere, but the path to it has changed. So people still have a need for what your organization provides. That hasn't disappeared, but you have to find new ways to access them. All right, that wraps up the content. I'm going to run a quick poll just to top things off. All righty. You would like to learn a little bit more about how Feather can help you do some of what we talked about today, go ahead and drop a yes. See, we have got some Feather users in here already, which is awesome. But yeah, if you're interested in retargeting website visitors, running geofencing campaigns to get in front of people who are in relevant physical locations, we offer email marketing. We offer a meta integration that makes it easy to run your social media campaigns in the same place that you're doing your email and your ad retargeting and your digital advertising. Yeah, go ahead and drop a yes, and I will connect you with somebody who can give you a more personalized walkthrough of what that looks like for your organization. Okay, well, I didn't see any questions, but I really appreciate everyone chiming in at the beginning with what you all are doing and what's working. And I included just some links here to different pages on our website that might be helpful for you to learn a little bit more. And our case studies as well can be really helpful. There's lots of different organization types on there, so hopefully you can find something that resonates. But yeah, thank you everyone so much for joining, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.